Today, we're tackling one of the most important questions anyone in Singapore will ask. How much do you really need to retire in Singapore? And joining me in today's discussion is Dinesh from our editorial team. Dinesh, as usual, welcome to the show.
Always happy to lend my thoughts, perspectives on the topics.
And imagine this, you are 65 and you just retired in Singapore today, right? The big question is, can you really get by on just $1,384 a month in Singapore? And well, this figure isn't random. It comes from the latest Household Expenditure Survey 2023. When you hear this figure, $1,384 a month, does that sound realistic to you for someone in Singapore to live on?
It does jump out as a relatively low figure compared to what I think many people are spending, right? But we can't deny that, the Household Expenditure Survey does have it.
Here's the thing, right? This figure, 1384, is actually a number meant for people from household which are 65 and above and are non-working anymore. At least this is based on what the average spending is in Singapore. This is not at the lower end, this is the average spending per person.
I think now that you mentioned that, right, you did go to the survey. So this was the lowest quintile, right? So the first to the 20th percentile.
Okay.
Right, that's the lowest quintile. The figure I got was about $480. And then when we go to the upper quintile, the highest one, the 81st to the 100th percentile, they are spending $3,200 per person per month. It's kind of the average. And I also think, when I hear this figure, another thing that I thought is that, okay, it's a little bit outdated also because it's obviously based on 2023 figures.
Which is not too recent, right?
Correct. So we are in 2025. I also went to see, how much did this figure actually rise each year? Based on the household income survey, again, the last 10 years, it's risen about 3.4% each year.
Per annum.
And the last thing I also wanted to input is that this is average, right? So we understand the quintiles and all that, but it's average. So 50% will spend below it, and 50% will spend higher than it. And when we do calculations for ourselves, we also should realize this average and we should calculate it for ourselves.
Yep. I think that's a benchmark we can think of, but some of us might spend more and some of us might not need to spend so much. Yeah. The other question I also find myself asking is that Singaporeans are living longer than ever as well, right? So the challenge today isn't just that you're retired and you're saving up for 10, 15 years during retirement. So sometimes, we got to make sure our money lasts us 25, 30, maybe even 40 years, right? So if you have an early retirement, let's say 60, and someone was, I think during the rally, right, PM Wong actually mentioned someone who is actually 100 years old today, right? And I think there are some people who are at that age and even older. So you might actually be in retirement for 40 or more years. So does that also increase the amount of money we need during retirement as well?
So I think obviously the short answer is going to be yes. I went to this book launch for CPF's 70th anniversary.
Right.
So CPF is 70, older than Singapore even.
Okay.
And there was Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong there, and he broke it down quite nicely. He said there are only 3 ways to have enough money in retirement, save more during our working years, right? So I think CPF does a job in accumulating about 37% when we start working. Then obviously when we grow older, the numbers change a little bit between the accounts and go lower, right? When we age 55 and above or something like that. And then second is, spend less. So you spend less, obviously you have more for retirement. The trick here is to try to smooth out your expenditure across your life as well. So if you have a certain amount of money now, you want to make sure you are able to live that same lifestyle when you're 70 or when you're 65, not live a very extravagant one now and then drastically downgrade, right?
Yeah, that would be tough.
And then the third way obviously is to retire later, and I think that's been also put in policies already. Where the retirement age is going up, the re-employment age is going up. With healthier lives as well, people will naturally work longer. So in the past, people used to be able to take out their money from CPF at 55, and then obviously it's because, the lifespans were shorter
70,
back then. Yeah,
I think it was in
less,
the 70s.
Yeah, probably less than 70, I think even, right?
Right.
We are quite young today. Not so young, but we're quite young. But, I can imagine someone starting work today seeing a higher payout age in the future.
For sure, because inflation will also be a factor there, right? Do you think longevity risk is often overlooked during retirement planning as well?
I think possibly. The one thing that is hard to do is try to extrapolate too far into the future, right? So if we have a benchmark, is something to work towards rather than, just a blank piece of paper and then we try to plan from there. We know the average, we're going to hit 84 years old on average. But on average, males will only live to 81.
Oh, wow. Okay. So not as much as I thought.
And then the females will live to 85.6. And then that's where you get your average in between 83 point something to 84 years old. This is average from the day you're born. But if you hit 65, then you have 21.2 years more on average again.
So even for us to think that, hey, I'm 65 and I look at the average life expectancy, 83, 84, and I think that, okay, maybe about 17 to 18 years, I'm really underestimating it.
Exactly.
Because the fact that I actually reached the age of 65 in the first place means my average life expectancy is now longer.
86 point something.
Yeah, I think there's some stats as well that says that if in Singapore at least, if you reach till age 65, there is a 1 in 3 chance that you'll reach age 90.
Possibly.
And I think that's also the point about retirement planning, right? Because you got to ask yourself, okay, if this person is living such a long life, that's great, but, do they have enough retirement income to last them for the rest of their life, right? And I think that's where CPF Life plays a important, vital part in Singapore's retirement in terms of building that foundation, because it ensures lifelong income.
Correct.
So for as long as you live, you will have this payout. What are your thoughts about how early we should start planning for our retirement in Singapore?
When we first started working, it's hard to think about, 40 years in the future when I'm 65, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Usually we just think of, okay, what's in front of us, our wedding, buying a home.
A better job.
Higher
pay.
The fortunate thing in Singapore is that, CPF forces us to save for retirement from day one.
It's compulsory.
First day you start working is the first day you start saving for your retirement, right? So I think that's one of the fortunate things of living in Singapore and, setting aside a portion to the special account, right? So even within CPF, we are setting aside portions to the OA, which is meant for our housing, and MA, which is meant for our medical.
And I just want to look at the numbers as well that we look on a average expenditure during retirement for a household. On a per household member, it's 1384, and on a per household basis, the number is 2349. So not exactly double, but
slightly less than double. Just thinking about it from the perspective of an elderly couple, assuming they're living alone and living together,
do you think 2,400 a month is sufficient for a baseline retirement lifestyle in Singapore?
Yeah, I think again I have to go back to it feels low, but when you think about it, the same arguments come into place. It's an average, 50% will spend more, 50% will spend less. Then you also take some things into consideration, like, what kind of expenses can these people realistically cut out, right? So by their age, you would expect them not to have dependents, hopefully, they don't have to pay for young children. Maybe at that age, they may also not have elderly parents, and some work-related expenses might decrease. They can cut back on entertainment a little bit. So if you take all these things into consideration, then I think possibly, right, at a base case, again, we're talking about CPF as like a base case, possible.
And I remember talking to this lady, I think she was around 66 last year, and so she just retired, and she was sharing with me a little bit of her expenses. So according to her, she thinks her expenses dropped by about 50%. So that's quite significant, but let me explain why. So the first thing she mentioned was that she no longer has a domestic helper, because before her retirement, I think her elderly mum was living with her still. Her mum passed on, so she no longer needed the domestic helper. She also gave up car ownership, which is obviously going to save money in Singapore, regardless of what age you are in. And actually, the one thing that she did share with me is that her concern is actually on her health. Right, because she feels that being healthy is actually the real priority when you are in your retirement, right? And in her opinion, at least, and I agree with her, she volunteers to try stay active, right? Learn new skills, volunteer. When she volunteers, the idea is that you think you're helping people, but actually you're helping yourself, because it gives you something to do. It gives you a reason to stay active, and to some extent, some purpose as well. And I think PM1 was just sharing during the rally earlier this in August, right? We can have a very long lifespan, and that's good, but we also want a very good health span. I think that was the term he used, which basically means staying healthy for as long as you can, right? You don't want your health span to be 10 years lesser than your lifespan, because it just means that you spend your last 10 years kind of like being in a wheelchair or being dependent on someone else.
PM Wong said, right, about 75 years is the health span, and then, people spend 10 years in poor health, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think that, that's something which Singaporeans also need to prepare for in this aspect?
There's this saying that health is wealth, right? I think we've all heard it, So if you don't have your health, it doesn't really matter how much wealth you've accumulated, actually, right? You may just not enjoy it, or you may spend all of it just going for treatments, medications, and you won't enjoy it.
Yeah, at any age.
Yeah. Right. So I think it's nice to be able to find something meaningful to do in your life. Keep active, keep healthy, keep moving as well, have the community around you. I think one thing that, PM also mentioned, is about not just physical activity, but, mental activity.
Right.
You're thinking about things all the time as well. You could also prefer to, take care of your grandchildren, right? I think that's beneficial for the family as well, and beneficial for the elderly parent as well. So there's many ways to keep active, I think.
I mean, I spoke to another lady as well, and then she actually decided to postpone her CPF Life payout until the age of 70. I believe she was actually working part-time, at that point, so she didn't need the money. So that's one thing she did. She opted for the CPF Life escalating plan, which increased her monthly payout by 2% each year. And she find that this is something useful because it ensures that, when there is inevitably inflation during her retirement years, that, with the 2% increment each year, it will help hedge against inflation.
Yeah.
So you protect your purchasing power over the long run.
I think many people are very eager to start their CPF Life payouts as early as possible. So the minute they hit 65, they want to start it. Because for so long, they can't kind of touch their money, right? So 65, when they can finally touch it, they just want to immediately do it.
No, I mean, you could touch it at age 55 actually. You just have to maybe make sure you set aside the retirement sum,
Correct.
which we'll get to later on.
Yes.
And then anything above that retirement sum you wish to set aside, you can touch it also.
Yeah.
But your retirement sum comes first. I think that's the priority.
Yes. And I look into some of these stats as well, to how many people in Singapore are actually working in their older ages, right?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So this MOM stat, so 250,000 workers aged 65 and above are still working as of
250,000.
as of 2024. I think going forward, you can expect this number to increase, but already today there are 250,000 people aged 65 and above working to some extent, right? So I don't know how much they're earning, obviously, but if there's a possibility where you don't need your CPF Life payouts, then why not just delay it? Because for every year that you delay, I think based on CPF website, they say you get 7% more.
Yep.
So if you delay 1 year 7%, you delay up to the maximum 5 years, there's 35% more payouts, right? So I think that's quite valuable in delaying if you are in a position to do so. And then more pertinent to your question on the escalating plan, people are spending more and more. So in the last 10 years to today, they're already spending more. The retiree households, right? The 1384, it's higher already compared to 10 years ago. And it's not going to stop, right? Every year it's just going to be increasing and increasing. So that's why the escalating plan comes in, and then you get your 2% more every year.
The other thing we'll talk about is really the retirement sum, which I know that's a topic which, it can be quite controversial because the retirement sum goes up every year. So there's typically 3 retirement sum that people look at. The first is the basic retirement sum. As of 2025, the amount is $106,500 for CPF members turning 55 in 2025. Then you have the full retirement sum. That amount is $213,000 as of 2025, so double of the basic retirement sum. Lastly, you have the enhanced retirement sum, which is $426,000 as of 2025. So this is double of the full retirement sum, right? So these are the 3 amount, people typically look at.
The retirement sums just give you that another benchmark to work towards, right? It's not like you must save the basic retirement to have a basic retirement expenditure when you're 65. It doesn't work like that. How it works is that, this is just the benchmark for the basic retirement sum. If you can hit it, then you will get this amount of money.
Which is, okay, so maybe just to add on, if you set aside the basic retirement sum of $106,500, you get about $930 a month during your retirement. Do you think that's enough?
Maybe you can argue, they get some government support
CDC
there
voucher
as well, right? So I'm just saying that in terms of financial monetary spend, the average is at that amount, right? So that $930 gives you a sense of, okay, it's sufficient at the lowest level, right? If you want the truly most basic retirement in Singapore, I'm not sure how many people will aspire to that or how many people want that from the get-go, but it's sufficient.
I think most of us would want to aim towards the full retirement sum, right? So full retirement sum is double of the basic retirement sum. So it's $213,000 as of 2025. And it gives you a monthly payoff of about $1,730 a month. So I think that's something which I would say that most people should be aiming for that as a default target. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it looks like a much more comfortable range already. This number of 1,730, it falls between the 61st to the 80th percentile. So the second highest quintile of retiree spending already.
Right, so that's certainly more comfortable. And then of course, for those of us who wants more for our retirement, we can also aim towards the enhanced retirement sum, ERS, which is $426,000 as of 2025. So that's close to $500,000. Obviously, that's a target. I would even say a stretch target for many people. But if you can hit this stretch target, you get about $3,330 per month for the rest of your life. I mean, that's a good payout to get each month, right?
And we have to remember that this enhanced retirement sum was also enhanced this year itself in 2025, right? So before then, it never used to be double of the FRS. It was 1.5 times. So this is just another option that we have, right? It's not as though the government is saying, or anyone is saying, go out there and put in the enhanced retirement sum. No one is actively going out to say that. It's another option that we all have. Now we have the option to put in enough into our CPF to get back, what the people within the 81st to the 100th percentile, so the highest quintile in Singaporeans are spending, right, which is 3,200-ish. So we have a retirement sum amount that lets us go into that top bracket.
What about for those of us who are older? What are some realistic strategies that you would say we still have an option to consider if we want to enjoy a decent retirement.
So, from a younger age, we already discussed some of these things. We can do that cash top-up or that CPF transfer from OA to SA. I think a lot of my friends that I spoke to, even when I was a bit younger, they've already considered some of these things. They've already done it. So if you do that cash top-up to your special account, you'll get that tax break in the first place, and then you also kind of get your special account higher, and then at the same time, it compounds at that 4% per annum for a longer time as well. And one smaller point here is that when you're a bit younger, so you don't have that first $60,000 in your CPF yet. So for those of you who are keeping track in your earlier career and you work, most of the money goes into your OA, right? So if you don't have that amount in totality yet, the $60,000,
you should top up your SA.
You top up your SA, and then you get, instead of 4%, you get 5% on your balances, right? So these are just small strategies that you can hack it. You can top up earlier. That 30 years of compounding at 4% will definitely help. If you already paid down your home down payment and comfortably paying down monthly, you can transfer OA to SA. These are just some strategies in your earlier years, right? And then obviously you have strategies in your later years. This will include the likes of delaying or deferring if you have an income. And the very fact of deferring it and you continuing to work full-time or part-time, it has a double effect here, because you're continuing to work, and then when you work, you actually continue to top up money into your retirement account at that time as well. Right. So although at a lower rate, so you also have that compounding effect of you contributing more rather than just not taking out, you're putting in a little bit more each month.
Yeah. And I think when we think about retirement planning, people usually focus on monthly income, which is also what we're focusing on right now. But actually, there are some major other concerns that older retirees have. And another example, right? I spoke to this older gentleman. He belongs to the Merdeka generation. So when I was asking him what is his concerns during retirement, I think that one of the first things he said is that it's actually his health, which is his top concern, right? Because, with chronic conditions, your healthcare needs is actually more concerning than even retirement income, right? Do you think healthcare is something that younger Singaporeans should also be prepared for?
I think definitely, right? When we are younger, the unfortunate thing is that we all think maybe we are Superman. We don't really fall sick that often. We don't need to go and visit the doctors, but inevitably, we can see with our parents, right? So it's not really a very far-fetched scenario. We can see with our parents, they are going to the doctors a bit more. Their health is ailing a little bit more. So we will reach there at one point in our lives, and that's why we need to take care of our health today. And it needs to be kind of holistic, because healthcare is in many different forms, right? So at the base case, you need to take care of your own health. Right, so go for your fitness, be active, clock your steps in. And then the second thing is that we need to ensure our base is covered with healthcare insurance as well, medical insurance, healthcare insurance. Make sure the time that we do need it, we are sufficiently covered. Then we can go to the other things like are we getting subsidized healthcare? I think the government is still subsidizing all Singaporeans.
Yeah, I think there's CHAS card.
Correct.
Almost, everyone gets a CHAS card, right? Yeah.
Correct. So all Singaporeans have access to subsidized public healthcare, but obviously these guys in the Pioneer and Merdeka generation, like you mentioned, they may not have enjoyed higher MediSave contributions when they were young. Some of them didn't even have that MediSave account until much later.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So at the start, CPF was just a one account, and then it evolved. When we grow up and become seniors, we may not need it because our MediSave account might have that amount to give us that protection, right? So I think it will be up to that generation of government to decide, but I think we will have a sufficient amount in our MediSave account to help us more than these people. So we can't bank on, another package for our generation. We need to think about it from our own perspectives.
Yeah, that's right. And I think housing is also something that I think most older people also consider when they reach a certain age. I think to me, there's really two sides of this discussion, right? The first is really to really make sure that they have fully paid off their housing loan, whether it's a condo or private property or HDB, because I don't think anyone wants to really retire in Singapore and still have a housing loan that they have to worry about. So that's the first thing. And then the second topic is really about right sizing, right? So quite often, especially for this generation of older people, right? They grew up in a generation when they own their own home.
Yeah.
Right. I remember my grandparents didn't really own their own home, but my parents owned their own place, right? And sometimes once the kids move out, the home might be a little bit too big. Maybe better to consider right sizing. And the right sizing can also give you a little bit more retirement savings as well.
From my perspective, I think we should think about it as retirement income sources from diversified pots. So CPF will be maybe the basic, the foundation one that we all have and we should all try to make full use of. Housing is definitely another high value asset that most of us have as well, and if we need to, we can. Many of us don't really like to move house, even at this age. So I can imagine that, when we are older, we'll be even more resistant to moving house if we can avoid it. But let's say we cannot avoid it and we want more retirement savings. There is policies in place that we don't have to move out. So, the lease buyback scheme where, you can sell back part of your HDB lease to the government. And then obviously you say there's right sizing. So if you're right sizing to a smaller flat, you might get some cash, but you might also, top it up into your CPF and then you enjoy the silver housing bonus. I think that's the other scheme that you can enjoy as well. If you don't want, there are other ways also, right? You can rent out rooms, you can live with your children and then rent out your property. You can do things like that, but basically your house is another potential retirement income asset that you can draw on.
Lastly, I just want to focus a little bit on purposeful living, right? I know that is quite important. It's not just about retirement means I stop work. That in a way is the former definition, but then you have to ask yourself what replaces work after that.
Absolutely. Retirement doesn't mean you stop life, right? You just stop work. Maybe the point is when people stop having something purposeful. I think each of us need to find our own purpose in life. So for example, I can just say, in my household, my dad still continues working, maybe on a very part-time, less stressful kind of level. He still does it. He goes most days. It keeps him moving, active. And I think he enjoys doing that. I don't think he's doing that to, maximize his earning, but it keeps him occupied and he feels like he's doing something valuable. So it doesn't mean that your life stops. It actually means that the next phase of your life starts. And it needs to be purposeful as well.
Do you think people should see CPF Life as the foundation for their retirement? And then maybe if you have your other investments and all these things, then that's supplement to your retirement income.
I think for sure, right? CPF, because all of us have it, we should use it. Right, so it will definitely form the foundation. Anyway, even if we don't think about it that way, we have no choice because we are contributing our salaries in there. There's going to be a large amount of money. So why not plan for it, right? And then you can think about, your other big assets. For most of us, it will also be our homes that we want to monetize when we are older. And then you can also invest outside the CPF system, right? You don't only want to put everything into CPF at the same time. I can understand why people say they don't. And then that will form your investments. You can invest in whatever it is, Singapore stocks, bonds, overseas. For someone who's a bit more savvy, knows what to do, I think that's a good place to, invest for the long term. And if you are really unsure and very risk averse, at least the CPF, your special account still gives you 4%.
Yeah. And I think with any planning, you got to start early. We want to encourage anyone who is in their 30s to also start saving today, right? Because if you start saving today, age 35, you have about 30 years to compound your returns over the long term, and that's going to give you a good return if you start planning for it today. So you can plan with CPF. I think there's a retirement payout planner. So I think the useful thing is that you can kind of ask yourself, what is the amount you want to realistically have, in terms of how much you want during your retirement. It then takes into consideration inflation, right?
Yes.
By the time, so because, we are in our 30s, 30 years to retirement, what could be that amount by then, that's equivalent to...
Let me just pull up my phone because I actually did this exercise when I got this question from you, right? You said you'd be asking me this and I thought, I better use this planner.
Sure, share with us.
The first step I think is you put in the amount of retirement income that you want.
Okay, so how much is it for you?
So I put $3,000.
Okay, this is for yourself, is it? Or for 2%?
It's for myself.
Okay, $3,000.
Obviously, it's also just playing around with this,
I think that's a good number.
Yeah,
I mean, the enhanced retirement sum is 3,003. I think this is a bit lower than the enhanced retirement sum, so that's a good target.
Correct. So this is in today's dollars. And then what it does is that, it kind of maybe extrapolates based on the 2%.
All right, so how much do we
inflation.
need by then?
Let me see what
We're
happened.
the same age, by the way, so this applies to me too.
Let me see what happened next, okay? When I turn 65, I will probably need $5,130. If I want $3,000 in today's dollars, when I turn 65, it will be $5,130.
Yeah, sounds logical. Yeah.
Right. So this is the amount that I need. And then it does some calculation and say, how much I am falling short of.
Oh dear.
It also has your
current savings.
Okay, so don't give up so much information. So this is the point where I will stop giving out too much
zero. He needs
information.
Zero. He already reached already.
But they tell you that there is a projected monthly shortfall. And then they give you some options to, how you can bridge this gap. Right, so I think the two main options were cash top-ups.
Okay.
And then there was also the CPF transfers, I think, from your OA to SA.
So obviously, if you do a cash top-up, it goes to your special account, RSTU, and that will be amount that immediately starts compounding at 4 to 5% per annum until the day, you reach 65. So that's one option.
Or 70.
Or 70 if you want to retire a bit later. And then the other option, of course, is that you can opt to transfer money from your OA, which earns a lower base interest rate of 2.5%, to your special account, which earns a higher base interest rate of 4%. And so that's at least a difference of 1.5%, which then compounds to a large amount also, given that we have 30 over years to go, right? Yeah. So that's the two main strategy we can consider.
Correct. I think CPF is very powerful. Every one of us need to use it because every one of us has it. Right, so why not use it? it is your own money. If you use the tools also that CPF provides you, you can see how the numbers all come together.
It's fair to also say, I think there's no one size fit all when it comes to our retirement, how much we need for our retirement. I think it all comes down to knowing your lifestyle as well as your spending habits and what kind of retirement you really want to enjoy. Whatever that amount may be, CPF Life can give us a solid foundation through a stream of lifelong income that we can count on. And I also just want to say, like, whatever we share today, Dinesh example, some of the people that I spoke to, during my interviews last year, I think those are just personal examples.
Yeah.
It applies to Dinesh, applies to me, applies to some of the people I talk to, but your circumstances might be different, very different from some of the people we talk to. So I think most important, you need to really focus on what you want for your retirement and plan towards it.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, right, depending on your personal circumstances, scenarios in life, you might want to supplement your CPF with savings, investments, or even part-time career job when you grow older, or even, think about how you can live holistically, volunteer. Though all those things come into play because each of us are individuals and we will lead our own individual lives.
And with that, thank you so much for joining us on this episode on the Dollars and Cents podcast. We hope you have found this episode useful and as you plan towards your own retirement. And remember, if you like it, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, or Spotify, wherever you're watching or listening to this. We'll see you again.